Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be followed by a moment of reflection, so please remain standing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
The adjourned annual meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Thursday, November 15th at 2018 at 7 p.m. to consider the items as were listed, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I would like to request everyone to put their cell phones on vibrate or silent and any other electronic devices as to not interrupt the meeting, and we'll proceed to roll call. And we will proceed. And I'd like to welcome all the visitors that we have with us this evening and also the viewing audience as we do one of the most important things that this board does, and that is generate and pass a balanced budget for Marathon County and its citizens. And so we will move on to item B, the consent agenda, items number 7 through 11. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Butke and second by Supervisor Langenhan. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. And we will proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. And we will move on to under resolutions. C, Health and Human Services Committee. Item number 12, requesting increased funding and oversight reforms for Wisconsin's Child Protective Services Systems. Resolution 54-18. And motion by Supervisor Rosenberg. And second by Supervisor Schaefer. Any discussion? Supervisor Robinson.
Is there a substitute amendment dealing with, there's a substitute amendment that changes the language in the last whereas and the last where, or the now for be it resolved that said that now it read, now therefore be it resolved that the Wisconsin Counties Association urges, and we're inserting the word in the Marathon County Board joins with the Wisconsin counties. It didn't make sense for us to speak for the counties, and the other change is that it reflects the change in the elections to include the governor-elect, not just the current administration. So I would move adoption of the substitute.
Okay. Is there a second to a second by Supervisor Johnson? Any discussion on the substitute amendment or a substitute amendment to the resolution? Item number C12, requesting increased funding. Any discussion? Supervisor Boots.
Yeah, John beat me to it. Yeah, that is the Health and Human Services Committee just went by what the Counties Association gave us. So this verbiage is correct, and Scott will be adding to it later. So.
Yeah, and it's all, the changes are already included in the one that's included in the packet for today's meeting. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Okay, and we'll proceed. And the amendment carries. Now to the resolution as amended. Any discussion on the resolution as amended now? Any discussion on the resolution as amended? Okay, and we then will proceed to vote. Okay, and we will proceed, and the motion is carried unanimously. Item D, number 13, opposing increase in truck size and weight, Resolution 55-18. Supervisor Christensen and Supervisor Wagner with the second. Any discussion? Supervisor Robinson.
Again, the amendment was, or the resolution was amended after the committee to reflect Governor-elect Evers, so I would move to adopt the substitute.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Rosenberg. Any discussion on the amendment? As the substitute? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. And we will proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Now and as amended, the resolution opposing the increase in truck size and weight. Any discussion on the resolution as amended? Any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. And we will proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. And item number E, Finance, Property, and Facilities Committee. Item 14, resolution amending the 2018 capital improvement budget and the 2018 through 2022 capital improvement program to fund the courthouse sheriff SIU remodeling and equipment and transfer $328,000 from the 2018 contingency fund. Resolution 56-18. This resolution does require a two-thirds majority vote, of the people present. Supervisor Nutting with the motion. Wow, was that a Packer score?
You have to announce the score if you do that.
Supervisor Stark with a second. Any discussion? Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. At this time, I'd like to move to table this item until we have more information and bring it back at the December meeting. Because there's really, I think, a lot of information we need to make an informed decision on this. Going through the list of what I think we need to know whether or not this task force, FBI task force, is dependent on having the new space available. And on top of that, we really don't, we weren't told a whole lot about what the money was going to other than construction of a new office. And it seems like an awful lot. It's half of our contingency fund. So, again, at this time, I'd make the motion to table until next month's meeting
when we have a little bit more complete information, we can make a more informed decision.
Yeah, what I would request is you have a motion to postpone to a time certain rather than to, okay?
So moved.
Okay, so the motion is to postpone to the December voters' meeting. Understand we do not have an informational meeting, so I guess I would like to know some of the information that is actually being requested. And I need a second. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ka. Excuse me, Supervisor Lowe, I'm sorry. Now, I guess I would ask Supervisor Johnson, what is this, because this was vetted by the Finance Committee, and it was vetted by the Public Safety Committee, so I guess I'm curious as to the information that you're looking for, so that that could be provided if that is seen as something that the rest of the board agrees with.
Again, first and foremost, it was presented as a necessary step due to the upcoming or potential upcoming task force run by the FBI to address the increased drug trafficking. That's how it was presented to the board, that this was a kind of a necessary move because, you know, there could be a large influx of personnel and the office space could not accommodate that, what they have now. So my question is, the first question is getting the task force here contingent upon having the new space? And if not, you know, then it's not. Secondly, how long is the task force anticipated to last? Now, that's something that we kind of need to know up front. It's a huge expenditure if it's going to be a 12-month task force. And that's not uncommon. In my personal experience, we've had a couple of task force we work with here in the local area, and none of them lasted, to my knowledge, over 18 months. So it's a pretty short time frame we're talking about, and if there's not going to be an increase in staffing beyond that point, it's an awful lot of money to spend for an 18-month period. So that's a second question. How long is it anticipated to last? Third question would be more of a nuts and bolts. What exactly is going to be done? I think we should know that. And again, because this is half the contingency fund that exists right now. And how does it fit, question 4, how does it fit with the priorities of the Sheriff's Department, considering we need 6 new dispatchers?
Okay.
And how does that balance? Well, you asked for the list, so I'm giving it to you.
And I believe that the sheriff's here and potentially able to answer almost all of those questions. And so that's why I'm asking, because some of the questions that you're asking was already asked at the Finance Committee. And so, so if the sheriff wishes and the board wishes to hear the answers to the questions that have been posed, if the sheriff is prepared to answer those questions, that may facilitate a vote tonight rather than delaying. So I'm just asking if the sheriff would, if there's any objection by the board to have
Well,
the sheriff
as a
answer the
point of
questions.
order, Mr. Chair, a motion's been made and seconded to table, and I
It's
think,
debatable, and there's also response. And so I'm asking the board if they want to hear the responses to the questions you've raised. Is there any objection to having the sheriff to respond to the questions that have been raised? Without objection, I'd request that the sheriff be able to answer to those questions that have been raised.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you again. So to answer the questions in regards to the FBI task force, the task force was presented to us and is going to be located in this courthouse complex. It's going to be located in an area that was formerly used as an exercise center, with that equipment now being removed because a majority of the people, or there was minimal use of that particular area, and also a lot of people have their own systems at home or provided gym memberships. So that vacates that space and would be space that's usable by the county for this particular purpose. The office space is being developed to house 14 different workstations. We currently have 6 individuals in the Marathon County Special Investigations Unit, which consists of members of Marathon Sheriff, Wausau Police Department, and Everest Metro. We have a commitment from the FBI for 1 agent to be assigned to this task force. We have a commitment from Lincoln County Sheriff's Office to assign one of their deputies to us. We are currently in discussions with Portage County Sheriff's Office and Stevens Point Police Department. We are currently in discussions with Langlade County Sheriff's Office to become involved with this task force. And just last week, the Drug Enforcement Administration out of Milwaukee has advised us that once this task force is up, they will look to task one of their agents here in Marathon County to assist in the task force endeavors. Bringing all these various law enforcement agencies under one roof is a benefit to not only Marathon County as a whole, but to central Wisconsin. We will eliminate deconfliction issues by multiple agencies conducting the same investigations of potential trafficking operations, but not realizing that the other agencies are involved in. So intelligence and information sharing will be vastly improved. The other thing that's a benefit is we are the largest agency in central Wisconsin. We currently take on a lot of responsibility by our special teams. Our special teams are engaged in assisting a majority of the northern third of the state through our bomb techs and our SWAT teams and more. We are like a big brother to all the counties around us, and they look to us for the leadership and guidance necessary to effectively do their jobs. That's a benefit to Marathon County as a whole, and it's also a compliment to this community. The Sheriff's Office in this particular case has been identified as being the lead agency by the FBI. This unit will be supervised by our office with the agents assigned to our lieutenant, working hand in hand. Sadly, I have to admit that we are a hub for controlled substance trafficking in north central Wisconsin, and that we have cases that we have organizations that are impacting the northern third of the state, central Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and the Arrowhead and more of Minnesota. Recently, a case that was initiated by us, and we brought in the FBI and the State Division of Criminal Investigation, shut down a major methamphetamine trafficking operation based out of California. This operation was involved in moving multiple pounds of methamphetamine, not only in this area, but throughout the areas I just shared with you. It was also involved with intelligence information that we initiated on and shared with the FBI, shutting down large truckloads of meth that was going to Nebraska and to Kansas. We are already doing this, and now we're going to actually reap the benefits of having the FBI right here. Another major case that was just concluded about 6 months ago was a heroin case. Heroin case that was based out of the Chicago-Milwaukee area and also Rockford, Illinois, moving pounds of heroin in this particular area and the other areas that I've already shared with you. Both of those cases are going to the federal level for prosecution, which is a benefit to us because it's not going into our system here, already overworking a district attorney's office that's worked on a number of other cases. But the real benefits is the fact that Marathon County is looking to be the safest, healthiest, and most prosperous county in the state of Wisconsin. This is a start in the right direction. The FBI is going to reimburse us for the overtime of all the task force members. The task force members will be assigned vehicles, cell phones, and other equipment, all at the FBI's expense. The FBI will provide training, both locally for our officers and for the officers of the task force here and also at national training centers because of our commitment. The FBI is committed to bringing us additional intelligence and surveillance operatives when needed. Just recently, we were conducting the JWoww case. The JWoww case is the methamphetamine case where we had individuals that were moving around this area. They know who our operatives are. They brought in a surveillance team up here that even our law enforcement wasn't aware of and was monitoring all the activities, providing us intelligence information. And they will continue to do that with this commitment. They have committed to upgrading current equipment that we have in our forensic technology lab, which includes the Gray Key system that I talked about before. The Gray Key system costs us annually $15,000 a year to upgrade that software, and that software is for the benefit of securing information out of cell phones, out of computers, and any other technological device that you can think of. And where we currently use it a lot is in our criminal activities, but especially in those predators that prey on our vulnerable, on our children, the sexual predators. The other thing that they have already provided to us is our concern about the fentanyl-based products that are impacting not only this community, but law enforcement as a whole across the nation. Fentanyl is extremely dangerous. We carry Narcan to assist individuals who are going into opioid overdose. But we also carry Narcan to assist our officers that if they come in contact with fentanyl, we can hit them with the Narcan to revive them so that they don't have to be face some type of medical emergency. The FBI, seeing that that's taking place here, has provided us with a device that's called TrueNarc. TrueNarc is a laser-based technology that does not require the opening of any dangerous drug packages for testing purposes. This device uses a laser, will hit the device or hit the package and identify what's inside that package so that we can take the necessary safeguard precautions to keep our officers and our community safe when we have to finally open that up to remove the content. This tool costs $25,000 and they're providing that to us because of our commitment to them. This, along with other specialized equipment, will benefit not only us, but will also benefit all of law enforcement throughout central Wisconsin. And once again, demonstrates that Marathon County is a leader. So I am seeking your support because this is a win-win situation for Marathon County and the drug enforcement efforts. Also, this is a one-time request to remodel this particular area, to providing the office space necessary for these people to effectively do their job, which is to safeguard your community and maintain it effectively. So I'm asking for your support on this, and we'll move forward from there. And if there's any, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
We'll take the, if you would, Sheriff, would you please stay there? We'll go down through the order in which they have requested to speak, and we'll see if there's any questions they have of you. Supervisor Black is first.
Thank you, Sheriff Parks, for your continued service in the briefing on the task force. You mentioned earlier about the benefits to the county as far as asset forfeiture. From your viewpoint and your experience, can we also expect a monetary benefit as the task force grows and as the caseload is adjudicated and the monies are allocated?
In the investigations that I talked about, if there were assets that were seized, the federal government is providing a share of those assets seized to the sheriff's office and our partners that were involved in that particular investigation. In one particular case, we seized over $3 million worth of funds, and they are in the process of going through the system to provide us a portion of that money. We've seized vehicles, we've seized houses, not only here but throughout central Wisconsin, based on investigations that we have committed to through the Special Investigations Unit, working hand in hand with the State Division of Criminal Investigations Unit and also with the federal government, the FBI DEA Task Force. That will continue, and they are fully in support of doing that.
Supervisor Boots.
I would encourage that we vote on this tonight. It's gone through 2 standing committees. Again, I'd like to reiterate, we're a standing committee board. If you wanted to discuss your concerns, they should have been at the standing committee level.
Supervisor Seibert.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. My only concern is if Portage and Lincoln and Langlade and the city of Wausau, other cities get on board, is Marathon County gonna take the brunt of the expense for the building they're in, for the remodeling, for any other expense, or are they gonna share in expenses in Marathon County's expenses for this task force?
So the initial outlay to remodel that particular area would be our responsibility because it's in this building. And it can be utilized at some point for any other office space, because that's what it's going to be built for. As far as any other expenses, those agencies have MOUs that are signed with us where they are required to be responsible for the wages, the benefits, and the training for their particular officers on the task force. None of this will fall under Marathon County. That's all part of the MOU that we're drafting up with these particular agencies, that you're on board with us, you're working hand in hand with us, your person answers to our lieutenant, but you're responsible for that individual and that individual's actions and well-being.
Thank you.
Supervisor Stark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Part of my comment was already mentioned by Supervisor Boots, is that this had been through the committees. We, in fact, at committee level, asked many of the same questions that were asked again tonight, that the sheriff answered at the committee level. And everything so far has been brought up too, as far as the confiscation of money. And I'm going to ask, when some of that money comes back, could some of that be used then at some point in the future to offset the cost of the fixing up the area, as far as the construction costs? But I see, again, this as a win-win. I see us as taking a leadership role in an area that we have recognized in this county as being one of the big problems that we're trying to address. And by getting the feds in at the ground level and seeing us as a leader working with them, I don't see how anybody could look at this as anything but a good thing. And then you talked about the vehicles that they're going to be providing. Were it not for that, we'd be consuming our vehicles and our fuel and our resources for that. And I may be getting myself in trouble here by asking this question, but earlier you had mentioned that you thought that they were working on whether or not they'd provide the furniture and some of that stuff. Is that nailed down yet, or is that?
Unfortunately, that has not been completely nailed down because of the fact that the agent that's working directly with us, Danny Diaz, has been assigned to the Barron investigation of the double homicide and the missing teen, and that's taking a little priority over any of this task force operation. But we have been in contact with Justin Tolomeo, who's the SAC for Wisconsin, and the FBI has indicated that they are, or he's indicated that headquarters is fully supportive. When I say headquarters, that's Washington, D.C., is fully supportive of developing this task force and finding the necessary funding to assist us in the law enforcement efforts, not necessarily in the remodel project.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted for this in the Human Resource Finance Committee, but Sheriff, I hate to put you on the spot, but just a few questions specifically. Number one is, what would happen if the county board did not approve the, transferring the contingency funds over to do the remodeling? Would the task force still occur, or would it not occur?
So we need the space for the officers that are there. Currently, I've got them crammed, the ones that are there crammed into a small area of the sheriff's office where our SIU is already. So we would need the space for that. And in order to continue getting more and more law enforcement agencies involved, as we're currently in discussion with, I wouldn't have the space to move those people or bring those people up here. And the best benefit, as in anything, is to have them housed under one roof rather than remain in their respective communities and working by electronic means or by telephone or trying to rush up here from Anago, Stevens Point, or Portage to quick do a case. So I know that Danny Diaz wants to make this work, and we want it to work, but the space is needed.
The next question I have, and I apologize if it's a little straightforward, but obviously we have the 6 dispatchers that's being requested right now. I guess to you as an expert in this, this is more of your field. What would you consider to be a priority? Obviously we're crunching money and everything, so just your personal opinion. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Sheriff, but it's just a specific question to help me, obviously, and I'm sure some of the other county supervisors to further solidify their decision as well.
Actually, it's an excellent question, Supervisor Zhang, and I appreciate you asking it. These are 2 different obstacles that we're facing. this county is facing a huge controlled substance problem. We recently were at, or earlier this spring, we were at the Attorney General Summit, and the Attorney General was talking about the impacts of controlled substances in the state of Wisconsin. And he was talking how if you took a line and drew it across the state, kind of diagonally from the Fox Valley area down to La Crosse and over to the west side of the state, you'd see a huge opioid problem. If you took that same line and looked to the north, you're looking at a huge methamphetamine problem. He said, but what you really have, he says, God help the people in Marathon County because they have both. He said, because you sit right in the middle of the state where a lot of trafficking takes place. So there is a huge controlled substance problem in here, and this task force will benefit this community in targeting those individuals who are trying to impact us by doing this illegal trade. The comm center is also very important to us, because you're looking at the safety of our community based on the need of having dispatchers that can answer the calls on radio for our first responders, for our emergency medical services, and for our law enforcement officers. We are already overwhelmed in that particular comm center, and that's been identified by a study in 2007 from Northwestern and just recently with one last year that says that there is a definite need to have that facility with at least one channel, most likely two, and there's a need. So yeah, you did put me on a spot, because both of these impact the community in an entirely different way.
The other thing that I would add to that, Supervisor Zhang, is the contingency fund money is one-time money, and that is not reoccurring. So if we were to use that for positions, it would not be there the following year. So as the administrator pointed out in his budget message, we have an approach that we are looking at to try to identify the sources of revenue that are needed to generate the money to pay for those positions. We're looking at additional potential resources or revenue from the beds that potentially could be leased to other counties, whether they have juveniles in those beds or not. The commitment is that if those revenues are raised, that those revenues would be utilized to fund those positions. The other option, and that was also spelled out by the administrator, was that if those funds can't be utilized, that we may have to look at closing the facility, because it's overly costly, and we can identify enough savings if we close it based on the current practice. However, the preferred option is to identify the additional resources in discussions with the other counties to be able to fund the, to fund those dispatch positions. But again, that we need to identify reoccurring resources and not one-time funds. Okay, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I just want to state, and I hope you understand, we need this task force. I'm not saying anything about that. It's just whether we need the additional expense of remodeling to have the task force. So I'll ask, even more pointed than Mr. Zhang, our Supervisor Zhang, who is extremely polite, will we have the task force if the remodel doesn't happen?
You won't have the commitment from the other counties, because they aren't going to cram their people into this particular office waiting because there's no workspaces for them. I don't see those other counties being willing to jump on board as aptly as they are right now.
Okay, so your opinion is we would get the FBI and we'd get Lincoln County, but nobody else would jump on board? Because you already have commits from those two.
Right.
Correct?
They're committed because they
Okay.
know that we're working towards this as one committed Central Wisconsin task force.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, secondly, you know, as far as nuts and bolts, that the cost seems extremely high. And like I said earlier, it's about half of our contingency fund. And the length of the task force is unknown. As with any endeavor of this nature, you don't know how long it's going to last. The more successful it is, the longer it'll last, because you're achieving benchmarks and and making the community safer, which would be a great thing. I'd love, you know, it's kind of a mixed thing. You'd love to see them stay here long enough, but you'd love to see them have the ability to say, hey, we've done enough and you're in better shape and we're leaving too. But again, my concern is that we go through this big expense and it's a 12-month program. And I can't expect you to know that. There is no way to know that. But it is a concern that I do have, that we're going to expend these funds, and then 12 months from now, we have a Taj Mahal or, you know, a huge office space that's not being utilized. And that would be a concern.
Sure.
You know? So I don't want you to think that I'm against having a task force. It's needed. I mean, the drug epidemic is out of control. I don't think anybody in this room would disagree with that or disagree with the need for the task force. However, it's the expense is the issue at hand here. And I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, well, the expense was identified, and the numbers as far as the remodel was generated by the maintenance department and not the sheriff. And so they are the ones that have identified the cost of the remodel. And to that end, those spaces would be utilized if the task force were dissolved, because we also have additional judges that are possibly being looked at some point being funded for. And so I have no doubt that those office spaces would be utilized. Supervisor Lowe.
Thank you. So I have a few questions. On Tuesday, Supervisor Mask asked if our sheriff's department would have arrest capabilities outside of our county, and you said yes, we did with this new task force. So to follow up with that question, so the people who are arrested, are they going to come back here to Marathon County, or where will they be housed?
So they would have arrest powers underneath the Title 18, Title 21 clearances that they received under the FBI. They've already been sworn in by the FBI under those two titles. So that's where they get their arrest powers from. And they're also working hand in hand with the federal agent that has authority all across the nation. The federal government could decide that they could house here if the arrests are in Marathon County. If the arrests are in Clark County, they could possibly take them to Clark County. It probably wouldn't matter which county jail they housed them in, because most likely they'd be heading down to either Western District or Eastern District Court for prosecution. So at some point, they probably will get moved to Dane County or elsewhere, because it's going to be a lot closer for the federal system wherever they're housed, or wherever the court that's hearing that particular criminal case. Initially, they may be in Marathon County, but just recently, we had taken on a case that was starting in the cities. The intercept was done in Trempealeau County. Wisconsin State Patrol was involved in it. Shots, or there was weapons involved, and high-speed chases. All of that went to Trempealeau County. Marathon County didn't see any of those individuals housed in our facility, but yet it was a Marathon County investigation stopped in Trempealeau County.
Okay, thank you. And then you also mentioned that the SIU officers who will be reimbursed for overtime, but you also did mention that only if approved by senior staff in Milwaukee. So what happens if they don't approve the overtime? Does the county have to pay for the overtime?
We're already paying that overtime as it is, because those officers are out doing those investigations anyway. In this particular case, rather than that becoming a problem with the sheriff's office budget, we submit the reimbursement request to the FBI headquarters down in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee SAC will then, or his assistant SAC will determine, does it qualify under task force rules? Anything that involves opioid, meth, cocaine, ecstasy, LSD, and even large quantities, like it would have to be megapounds, I mean like truckloads of marijuana, would all qualify underneath the federal system for overtime reimbursement.
Okay. Who takes care of the 3 vehicles for the maintenance? Do we do that, or does the FBI?
The vehicles are leased vehicles, and they would be returned to the companies that have those particular vehicles entered into a lease with the federal government.
Okay. And
That was the last question. We're stretching out.
I just one more question. So it really concerns me that we were approached by the FBI for this, and they're not going to put a lot of money into it. I mean, we're putting half of our contingency fund into it. So that's my concern, that they approached us and they want us to want to give $308,000 to do a remodel. I mean, I don't see that as being very fair. So that's just my last comment there about that.
This year, the FBI, and what I just read to you on this form, as far as software commitment, is over $100,000. That'll be that's an annual commitment by them, $100,000 for this particular equipment that they're going to be installing into our forensic lab. So I think in the long run, their commitment is probably much greater than Marathon County's.
Supervisor McEwen.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would have to agree with Supervisor Johnson that we need this task force, and I think everybody in this room realizes that we do have a drug issue in Marathon County and central Wisconsin. With this task force, I think it's going to be beneficial, for the central Wisconsin area. And as far as the building remodel, I hope Supervisor Johnson's right. It's in 12 months we don't have a drug problem anymore, and the task force goes away. But I think that the task force is probably going to be going longer than we would like it to. But no one can say how long it's going to be here. But as far as the remodel, once it's done, and a year, 2 years, 5 years, and the task force is no longer needed, we're going to be able to utilize those workspaces, and that money that's put into it, I think, should come from Marathon County, because we're remodeling our buildings, and any other building that we remodel is paid for by Marathon County. And if there's anything we can do to reduce the influx of drugs coming into this area, I think we need to support that. So I would ask that you do support this. I thought the same thing, that I would prefer the money to go for the dispatchers, but it's one-time money, and next year we would have to take 300 and some or 400,000 out of the contingency again to pay for that. So that's not going to work. So, but I agree, the dispatchers is a priority, but this also is, and I would urge everybody to please support this, and they need an adequate place to work. So thank you.
Supervisor Stark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple subtleties, too, that I think are there that we kind of lose or forget about, and some of those are, it was briefly mentioned, that by having these at the federal level, we're not going to be tying up our prosecutors, we're not going to be tying up our judges, and ultimately, a good share of these folks are not going to be living in our house, they're going to be living down in Dane County or Milwaukee. And those of you that, I've only been on this board for about 5 years, but those of you that know me know I'm a fiscal conservative. But the other thing is, what I've seen over the years, and I'm not trying to be cruel to the people who have been here a lot longer than me, but we can lead or we can follow. And for most of the things that I've seen us jump on, it's following. We're last to get on board. Here's a chance for us to lead. Here's a chance for us to step out in front. And I'll have to say, I'd be ashamed of us if we don't take this opportunity and lead.
Supervisor Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have, I think it's been alluded to by Sheriff Parks already, but I just want to get this clear. If this all goes through and we fund this, what is the potential increase of personnel for the SI unit? What would the manpower part of it? What would that increase the manpower potentially? I know we don't know for sure that all these are going to definitely commit, I don't think, but what's the manpower expansion going to be for this?
So SIU itself is already committed at 6, because that's what we already have here. So we're not looking to add any more of our officers to this. With the exception, I do have 2 other individuals that we're looking to put on there as far as deputies assigned under the Title 18 and Title 21. So they'd have that status. total commitment, if we can get it, would be to fill those 14 offices with operatives from Marathon County and from central Wisconsin, including the agencies that I already mentioned, and then even DEA. The Wisconsin Division of Criminal Investigations, which is out of Department of Justice, has their office on the west side of the city. They're interested in doing this, but as far as moving their officer from the DOJ over to central Wausau, it doesn't make sense for them to put their officers over here, even though they're going to be working hand in hand with this task force.
Okay, is there any other questions? Supervisor Sly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions for you, Scott, but just want to make a comment. For years, that's all we've been doing is talking about our drug problem. Here we have a chance to get in on the ground floor and maybe do something. The building to be remodeled, $328,000. If I'm not mistaken, this room costs us $600. So you ask me, which buck are we going to get the most bang for? Here are 14 people down there to work on the drug projects. This is something we need, and we should support it and get it going. And with that, I would like to call the question.
Question has been called. Is there any objection? Is there any objection to the question being called? Okay, the motion that is on the table is a motion to postpone. A aye vote will a positive result in the aye vote will postpone the vote on the original motion to the December meeting. If you wish to vote on that tonight, vote no, and the motion to postpone will be killed. So that's the vote before you, and I will be in favor of the motion to postpone. A no will be against the motion to postpone. Supervisor?
Yep. Is the motion on the amendment just a majority vote?
This is a simple majority. To postpone is a simple majority vote. And we will proceed. And the motion failed. And so we're back to the original motion. The original motion is to approve the resolution amending the 2018 capital improvement budget and the 2018-22 through 2022 capital improvement program to fund the courthouse sheriff SIU remodel and equipment transfer of $328,000 from the 2018 contingency fund, resolution 56-18. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. This does require a 2/3 majority. Supervisor Lang, would you confirm, please? Thank you. We'll proceed. And the motion is carried. Moving on to item number F, Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee, number 15, Budget and Property Tax Levy Resolution, Resolution 57-18. Motion by Supervisor Schaefer and second by Supervisor Zerini. Any discussion? Any discussion? We need the amendment offered by anybody as far as the 2019 CIP project. Supervisor Stark, and seconded by Supervisor Boots, to offer the amendment, the 2019 CIP project from Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee, request to amend the 2019 budget CIP, CIP budget. And that is to transfer those vehicles and the funds to those departments that are going to be leased. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Is there any discussion on that amendment? That's the amendment that's on the floor, amending the budget as it was presented. Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote on the amendment. We will, there we go. Clerk has to untie your hands. And Supervisor Gill, thank you, and we'll proceed. And that motion is carried. And any other discussion on the budget as amended? Any other discussion on the budget as amended? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote on the, excuse me, just time out. The budget as amended, yep. And now we can proceed to vote. Supervisor Schaefer, confirm, please. Unless you're still thinking. There we go. And we will proceed. We have a budget. The budget is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. That is the 2019 budget, the biggest document and policy that we passed in a year. Moving on, item G, announcements and/or requests.
I will never be able to do that again.
Supervisor Stark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to announce to the Finance Committee that our meeting that was scheduled for Monday is canceled because we don't have any agenda items that require immediate attention.
Okay, thank you. Clerk has an announcement.
I need signatures from Infrastructure Committee, Health and Human Services, and HR and Finance and Property.
Okay, Supervisor Krause.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. I just would like to mention, I don't know if any of you have followed the results of the elections on the addendum for medical marijuana, but Kenosha came in at 87% of the population, and Racine came in at 85% of the voters in favor, and Marathon County was third, I believe, at 83%. So that's a large majority. There were some 70% and some 60%, but mostly 70%, and we were like third. So that's a resounding positive from the community that they do want to see medical marijuana made possible in their county and in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, first off, on behalf of the Hmong Iti clan councils in the clans in the local area here, they just wanted me to express their deep appreciation and gratitude for the support of the resolution that was passed. I also want to thank the county supervisors that were able to make it to the resolution presentation. I spoke with all the clan leaders, and they have expressed their deep appreciation and gratitude for the recognition of a important holiday. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the clan leaders.
And we have, last but not least, Supervisor Guild.
I just wanted to give one final plug that the airport restaurant is officially open. So if you haven't been out there yet, they've got what I hear is a wonderful Friday fish fry, as well as a great Sunday brunch. They are also open during the week for lunch and dinner, and there is space available if you'd like to have business meetings out there as well. So I have had the opportunity to have lunch out there once, and it was very, very, very good. So this is the last you have to hear about the Blind Rooster Restaurant from me for now, but please take note that that is a great new opportunity down at the airport in Mosinee.
One last announcement, just so everybody is aware, December, there is no information educational meeting. There is only one meeting, and that will be the voters' meeting, and that will be Tuesday, December 18th at 7 o'clock here. Any other announcements and/or requests? Seeing none, I will take the infamous motion Supervisor Opel has made and Supervisor Christensen has seconded the motion to adjourn. And all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And everyone, have a happy Thanksgiving.